Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. For those of you new here, my name is Donna, and for those of you not new, thank you so much for continuing to come back and support my channel. I appreciate all of you so very much. Today I'm doing episode 97 of my palette roulette series, in which I let an app choose a palette for me. I utilize it over 1 week's time, and then I come back to you. I go over the palette with you. I show you some looks I created, talk to you about how I feel about it, and then we pick another palette. This week's palette is the ABH Alyssa Edwards collab. This is a collab that came out, I want to say, about 2 years ago, maybe a year ago, June. I'm not 100% certain, but I'm thinking that this palette came out and started the rocket fire launches that ABH went through last year with palette after palette after palette after palette, and I want to say that this was the first one. Maybe. I think it was this, and then Riviera, and then this, and then Jackie Ina, and then Norvina. I mean, there was a ton of palettes that came out that year, and I want to say that this one started it, but I could be wrong, so don't quote me on that. This is what the outside of the packaging looks like. It is just a glossy, hot pink package with Alyssa Edwards eyes on the front with a little wink at you, which I think is super cute. I love like the font on this palette and everything. I love that it's not felt packaging because it doesn't get gross, and it is hot pink. And while I am not a pink person, I have become kind of a pink person because it is a color that I do love putting on my eyes. On the back of the palette, you do see just Alyssa Edwards' signature there. It says always and forever Alyssa Edwards, and then some information about the company and that it is cruelty free. It tells you that its shelf life is 18 months. And on the inside, you are going to get the standard mirror that ABH always puts into their palettes. And then this is what the palette looks like. There is a slot up here because they do always put a double-ended brush into their palettes. I honestly believe that that brush is poop. So I always put those brushes into my dual-ended brush collector over there, but I also never use those brushes. They're too pokey for me, to be honest. The Alyssa Edwards palette did come out with a $45 price tag. It is a limited edition item that is actually still for sale on the ABH website for $27, but its original price was $45. There is 0.392 ounces of product in this palette, or 0.028 ounces per pan. That is a really small pan of eyeshadow. That is roughly half the size of a ColourPop single shadow or a Sydney Grace single shadow. That is what the size of a single pan of eyeshadow in every ABH palette is. They are tiny. If you dig in, you are going to go through these shadows rather quickly. I am very nice to my palettes. I don't dig in a whole lot. There are a couple shades in this palette, which we'll go over, that I do feel like you had to dig into more, and those were mostly the shimmer shades in here. This palette does have a 4.6 star rating on the ABH website with 120 reviews that make up that 4.6 stars. On Sephora, it does rank in at 4.3 stars with 160 reviews, and on Beauty Bay, it ranks in at 4.3 stars with 39 reviews. Now, you can't pick this up on Sephora anymore, and I can't remember if I saw it on Beauty Bay for sure or not, but their ranking is still on like Google when you look it up. It is cruelty-free and gluten-free for those of you who are looking for those things in your makeup items. This was in collaboration with Alyssa Edwards. For those of you who do not know who that is, she was a megastar on RuPaul's Drag Race. She is super popular, and a lot of people know a lot about her. I am not one of those people. I didn't buy this palette because of Alyssa Edwards. I bought this palette because of the color story. It does have 14 shades of Alyssa's must-haves. Most of them are matte. There are only 3 metallic shades in this palette, and they are this pink and purple right here, and then this gold one right here. I really do like a color story that is a little more matte and shimmer ratio friendly, but with that being said, I also like whole matte looks. This is an all matte eye look. And for those of you who are wondering, yes, this look is coming at you in the very near future. There are 4 not safe for the eye colors in here according to the FDA. Those shades are this one here called Texas Made, this one here called Dream It, this one called Believe, and this one called BBDC. Do I know what BBDC means? No, I sure don't. This is mostly bold brights. There are some pressed pigments in here. They are all very opaque in nature upon application, except for one, really, and that's this yellow tone. I do feel like this yellow is decent in this eye look, but I also know that it is packed on, and when you try and blend the yellow, it just kind of shears out to nothing. That one, I would say you really do have to pack on to get any kind of opacity from it, but for the most part, the rest of the shadows in this eyeshadow palette are pretty opaque. These shadows do work best with a primer. I am wearing a white eyeshadow primer today, but they also work well with just about any eye primer. I would say that you need to use them with an eye primer if you want any kind of pigmentation or longevity that lasts on your eye look. Without an eye primer, they do perform. They're just not at their best. They last about 8 to 12 hours on an eye, dependent on, again, the primer that you're using, but also dependent on the color. I would say the ones that I see drift off in that 8-hour mark are definitely Brick Road and then Headliner, which is the white. Those ones tend to fade faster, but they are lighter shades. They would fade faster anyways in an eye look, and the yellow, like I said, kind of blends away to nothing. So if you don't pack it on, you're not going to have any kind of longevity out of that shadow. The mattes are super soft in texture, I feel like, but not soft like could dig into in the pan. I also know that they're super opaque, except for that yellow one, super opaque upon first application of it. Some of them do shear away a little bit. Most of them have fallout, and if you tap your brush off, you're going to find that a lot of the pigmentation falls off the brush. Like, you're left with next to nothing. So when I do colorful eyes, and you guys will see in the video that I do for this, like, I tap off quite a bit the first couple layers of especially this blue shade in here, and the purple tap off quite a bit in the beginning, but then the last brush stroke that I go into the palette from, I go into the palette and then straight onto my eye, because otherwise the pigmentation just isn't going to be there. When you tap off, you are left with quite a lot less pigment on your brush than what you started with, because they are just kind of powdery. If you're familiar with ABH or familiar with the other reviews that I've done on ABH palettes, that's pretty consistent with what ABH's mattes are. The shimmers really left me wanting more. They're not fantastic in this palette. I think the best one is this gold, but these two, I found myself having to dig into them to get any kind of pigmentation onto my brush, and I was using a super densely packed brush. I also feel like they did not work well with a brush, whether wet or dry. They really worked best with your finger. This one did okay with a brush. I mean, it did better than these ones with a brush for sure. I feel like because you had to dig in so much to these two shades with a brush, if you were going to use a brush, that it could come out looking very, very chunky, and I don't like that about my shimmers. So they left me really wanting more. They don't really remind me a lot of the regular ABH formula. So for shimmers, I remember being blown away by ABH shimmers in the past, and I'm just not with this palette. They perform more like a really satiny satin. Most of them blended quite well. There were some that did not blend super great, but you can make them work if you want to spend a little extra time with it. This eye look took me, I would say, about an hour this morning. I've gotten to the point where I don't like fuss when you can see like around the blue, where the blue and the purple meet each other, and then again where the yellow and the purple meet each other. It's just really patchy. It's just really patchy. And I've gotten to the point with ABH shadows where I just don't want to fuss with it anymore, so I just stop. I'm just like, I'm if I keep going, I'm going to ruin this eye look. I'm going to get pissed off at it, and I'm just going to take it all off. And I knew I had a lot of videos to record today, so I couldn't do that. There are some that work a whole lot better than others in this palette, but for the most part, they blend pretty decently. I honestly had a better time with this blue than I've had with a lot of blues in the past. I do have a couple eye looks, including this one, that have this blue in them, and I really did like the blue. I did bring in some of my single shadows for the shimmers because, like I said, these shimmers just weren't my favorite. This isn't my favorite ABH palette to work with, to be honest. I do like that it folds all the way back on itself, so it's super easy to hold. You can even, you know, flip it all the way around and use it like this to put your makeup on. It works really well. I also like that the magnet on these palettes is pretty dang stellar. They do travel well. I have traveled with the ABH palettes in the past, so I do know that they travel well. It's just, it's not my favorite palette by ABH, and that's totally okay. I do like the color story. I will tell you, I have quite a few eye looks that I was able to perform just utilizing this palette that are very everyday, very neutral, which I do like about this palette. It does have those pops of color if you want to dig into the color, but it also has a good array of more neutral tones that you can use in an everyday eye look if you have to segregate what you're wearing on your eyes for work from what you're wearing on your eyes for any other time. I'm not one of those people. I work at Ulta, so, you know, even as a district leader, we're allowed to express ourselves, and I love that because I can wear whatever eye look I want to, day or night. But if you're one of those people that needs a neutral eye for work, but you do like the pops of color, this is probably a pretty perfect palette for you. But do you like mostly matte? If you like mostly shimmer, this isn't going to be the palette for you. Also, if you're new-ish to makeup, this probably isn't going to be the palette for you because some of these shades do suffer from not being able to blend super great. So with that, let's talk about some swatching. Okay, so this is the first 5 in the palette. And we start with Headliner, which is just a matte white shade. You guys can see it's not super showing up on camera. I'm going to pull some more out and swatch right over the top of that again. This is one of the lightest color. Well, it's white, so it does have a little bit of opacity problem, but I assure you on a primed eye, this does have some pretty great opacity. It is what is in my inner corner here. It's also what is in my brow bone. It can be a very stark white. And then the second shade is the best of the shimmers in the palette, and this one is called Inspire. It's a metallic medium gold shade. It really has a nice dulled down yellow gold effect to it, and I did have it in an eye look that I have pictures of. These pictures of the eye look with that shade all over the lid, I was half asleep, had forgotten to take pictures, laying on the couch thinking I need to go wash my makeup off. Looked at myself in the camera and was like, I should take a picture. It still looks good. At that point in time, the makeup had been on my face for a good 10 hours. So remember that when you're looking at this picture of me laying on the couch to get a picture of my eye look. The next shadow in that 5 is this one. It is Unicorn Tribe. It is a medium matte purple. It does show up very pink. I would say it's more pink than it is purple for sure. Matter of fact, when you put it up next to the other purple in the palette, it doesn't look purple at all. And then we have this one, which is the yellow, and it is called Brick Road. Again, this one, I don't 100% think that that is the best yellow on the planet. I also know that it shears out. And then the next one is a pressed pigment in the palette, and it is called Texas Made. It's the first pressed pigment. You can see how closely this pink and this supposedly purple look, and that is no different than what they appear on your eyes. They're way too similar to be in the same palette, in my opinion. And the last two in that top row are Dream It, which is the blue shade. That is another pressed pigment that's in the palette. I really did not struggle with this blue. I struggle with a lot of blues. I really did not struggle with this blue. I enjoyed using this blue. I enjoy the tone of this blue. It is really just a very pretty, cool toned cobalt blue that is beautiful. It is in my eye look today. right along the top in between the pink and that yellow there. That is that cobalt blue, but next to that purple believe shade, it kind of looks like the same color as that. And then the last shade in that top row is this one. It is called Back Rolls. And it is a matte red brown. I really do enjoy the shadows in this top row. I used the blue a lot, actually, which is kind of odd for me because I don't typically do well with a blue eye look. I loved that brown. That brown is just a gorgeous brown. I used it in many colors. I think it is paired with that Inspired Gold shade on the eye look that I was telling you I was half asleep in. I love that shade. I think that the shades along the top row were my favorite to use in eye looks. That shimmer was the only one in the palette that really performed very well, so I did use it a lot in eye looks if I was going to use a shimmer. Half the time after, you know, going through the shimmers the first time, I was like, I'm not using these shimmers. They kind of suck. The next row starts with this one. It is called the Supreme, and it is a matte orange, but you guys, it performs more like a coral and could sway a little orange brown in a brown eye look. I use this actually quite a bit in my more neutral eye shades. The next one is this one, and this is the HOE or Ho shade, and it is a matte warm brown. This one blended the absolute best, but it feels the weirdest in the pan. I think it feels like a creamed powder formula, and it's one that I use a lot in my crease. The next shade is that shimmer purple, and it is called DDG. It's a frosty cool toned purple, and I do like it. It did perform super great with your fingers, but it didn't perform at all with a brush. I found myself having to dig into this shadow just a little bit more to get some kind of payoff if I was using a brush, but using your finger, it actually goes on quite well. And then we have this one here, which is called BBDC. This one is a pressed pigment, and it is kind of a eggplant shade. It's a matte. It was the worst one to blend. It also stained quite heavily. It was pretty bad. You guys can see, hopefully, in the swatch, just how really awful that shade is. This one provided nothing but patchiness. Also stained like no man's business. Like even the next day after washing my face in the morning, it still was on my eye after 2 or 3 cleanses. And the last 3 on that bottom row are this one here, which is Beyond. It is a metallic pink, and you guys, it's a really pretty metallic bright fuchsia if you can get it to work on your eye looks. This one only performed super well with your fingers. Those shimmers just didn't do it for me. They're more of a really heavy satiny satin than they are a shimmer, and can kind of just fade away to nothing in your eye look once the mattes are on. It just doesn't, it looks like a really satiny satin. Then we have Believe, which is another one of the pressed pigments in the palette, and that is a matte bright purple, cool toned in nature. This one stained. I also found there to be a lot of eye irritation with this. You guys can see the inconsistencies in that shadow. Like parts of it look pink and parts of it look purple. So I don't know. It was my least favorite. It is in my eye look today. It is packed on top of the blue to help that patchiness. I knew that the blue was going to help with the patchiness of that purple. So that's what I did. But I mean, from afar, you guys can definitely see the patchiness of that shade. Like, I just don't know what they did to it to make it feel. I've seen pressed pigments that were purple that were much better than this. So there's that. And then we have this shade here, which is Beast, and it is a black. It is a decent black. I think that this swatch isn't doing it justice because it looks more like a brown black in the swatch, but it is a damn good black. But can you guys see all the, I mean, one of those purples is a shimmer, I get it, and one of them is a matte. So I get the differences, but there's just, in an eye look, especially with that shimmer purple, in an eye look, those two purples don't really look excruciatingly different. That eggplant purple is just awful, honestly. It doesn't blend, it stains, it's patchy, it's gross. This is not my favorite row of this 2-row palette. There are some really standout shades in here. That black is an amazing black, far better than the Violet Voss one that we were using last week. I don't know. I just don't feel like these ABH palettes, the ones that come in, you know, this 14 pan setup, have ever given me the problems that this one did. Will I keep it? Yes, because I have all the ABH palettes and I'm a completionist, and it would hurt my soul just a little bit to get rid of it. I do think I would pull it out so for some fun eye looks, something like this. I think that once I go through my palette collection and really sit down and look at the palettes that I have that have this same color story in it, I might give it away, but for now it will remain in my collection because I just love the color story and I love ABH. Not my favorite to use though. I would also like to just say that I did pay $45 for it. Well, I didn't because I bought it at Ulta and I get a discount there, but I did purchase it at that $45 price tag. I don't necessarily think that it's worth that $45 price tag. I do think that it's a palette worth the $27 that it's currently on sale for on the ABH website. So if it's a color story that you're interested in, if you like mattes more than you like shimmers, if you're okay with the shimmers being more satiny than like sparkly, purchase it. Is it my favorite? No. Would I buy it again? I guess that's the telltale sign, right? Would I purchase it again knowing what I know now? No. Okay, so we're gonna pick a new palette, and to do that I do use the Decide Now app that I picked up from my Play Store. I do have a Samsung Note 9, so I do operate out of an Android system, but I do know that this kind of decision wheel kind of application is also available on the iOS system. It just looks like a wheel of fortune. You put all the information into it that you want it to pick from, and then it picks. In order to pick a new palette, we do spin the wheel. As I get new palettes, I do put them into the wheel, and as we use them through this palette roulette series, or I declutter them, I do pull them out. So hopefully we won't see repeats. I've been trying to keep on top of it because there have been mistakes made. So to pick a new palette, we just push the blue button there and it spins the wheel. So we're gonna do that. We did get the Milani Gilded Jade palette. This is a palette that is actually relatively new to my collection. My aunt got it for me not that long ago. So I'm gonna go get that. I'll be right back. Alrighty, this is the Milani Gilded Jade palette. This is exciting because if you guys are familiar with my channel, you know that there isn't a whole hell of a lot of drugstore in my collection. But my aunt did get this palette for me. I'm excited to use it. It does have 2 face powders on there too. I'm not sure that I'll use them as face powders, but the option is there. And I'm actually kind of excited. This is very fall in my opinion. And you know, it is the last weekend in September, so we're definitely cruising right into fall, and I have to film a fall look for a collab that is coming up next weekend with a bunch of ladies I'm so excited about. This will probably make an appearance. It really is a fall palette and I'm really excited to use it. I haven't used it yet. I'm excited to come to you and talk to you about how I feel about it and show you some pictures of what I created. And these green eyeshadow looks. You guys, green is my favorite color. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you enjoyed it so much that you're considering giving it a big thumbs up. Really does help our channels out here, and it's free, totally free to do. I also hope that you liked it, or me, enough that you're considering subscribing to my channel before you go. I do upload content 3 to 4 times a week, depending on the week, so please don't forget to hit that notification bell. If you do subscribe, I wouldn't want you to miss anything, and that'll prevent that from happening. I do hope that you guys are all doing fantastic out there. I hope that you're enjoying your Monday thus far. I also hope that the world is treating you as kindly as it can in the times that we are in. With that being said, please don't forget to wear your mask when you're out in public. You guys, we're never going to get out of this unless we all start wearing our masks around here, and love each other, but love each other from afar. I hope that you guys have an amazing day, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks, guys. Bye.